This story takes place 4 years ago, and it still haunts me to this day. It was Christmas night, and my family were driving home from this fancy restaurant. I, unlike my family, wasn't tired, so the 45-minute drive seemed perpetual. On top of that, my little sister was constantly moaning about how her friend didn't get her anything for Christmas. After about 20 minutes of driving, my dad stopped at a gas station to get some cigarettes, and my sister, brother, and mother all got out to pee. I stayed in the car as I had already gone before we left. Once they all left, I decided to play a few games on my phone. I looked at the car clock and saw that 10 minutes had passed, so I immediately wondered what was taking them so long. As soon as I peered out the car window, I saw a man staring at our car. The man startled me as I didn't know how long he'd been watching. What made it even more unnerving is that he had a plain blank face. No expression was shown. It was hard to make out any features as it was pretty dark and he wasn't standing in an illuminated part of the station. He was about 5'9" and looked to be middle-aged. Once he saw me notice him, he started walking towards the car, and I'd be lying to you if I said I wasn't scared. Luckily, my dad came back with the rest of the family just as the man took a couple steps. My dad apologized and told me he had been in an argument with the cashier. I didn't care, I was just glad my dad was with me. I took another glance at the man outside and he was still staring, but this time he had an annoyed look on his face. We drove off, and for the rest of the car ride I couldn't stop thinking about that man. This wouldn't have been too bad if it had ended there, but it didn't. Later that night I was watching YouTube while everyone else was asleep, and luckily for me, a storm was raging over us. I enjoy storms, it makes me cozy as I'm laying in bed. I put my phone down and just enjoyed the ambiance. That didn't last for long as I heard something smash into the window behind me. I lurched forward and nearly fell out of bed. I thought a bird had just smashed into the window. I parted the blinds and what I saw next haunted me. I saw a man standing out by my parents' cars, looking up at my room. I took a closer look and I nearly had a heart attack. It was the same man that I saw at the gas station, only this time when our eyes met, he grinned. Being the 14-year-old I was, I did the manly thing and screamed at the top of my lungs. My dad came running down the stairs and entered my room. "Why the fuck are you screaming?" he said. I told him about the man and I explained everything that had happened. My dad grabbed a baseball bat and told me to call the police. After 10 minutes, the police turned up outside our house and found the man in their shed. He got arrested, and that was the last I saw of him. The next day, my dad inspected the house, and we found the handle of our back door had been damaged, but not completely broken. This gives me an eerie feeling as if he actually managed to get in. He could have harmed us, or possibly even killed us. This is my first post and first ever day on Reddit, so please bear with me. When I saw the Let's Not Meet subreddit, I knew I had to share one of my own not-so-pleasant stories. It was Christmas Eve and I was a freshman in high school. My family had been split up for some time, so normally we trade off of Christmas Day and Christmas Eve every year. And this year, I had come home early for my grandparents' Christmas party while everyone else was at my aunt and uncle's, celebrating at another party. When I was dropped off, my cousins offered to stay with me for a few hours, but I declined. I thought I could watch some of my new DVDs and get some alone time in the new house, which is a rarity. I had noticed an unfamiliar car parked on the street, but didn't think anything of it considering it was Christmas Eve. Probably a neighbor's relative or something. After I got inside, I locked the door, grabbed snacks, and started to settle down. I hadn't been home for more than 15 minutes when there was a knock at the door. I unlocked the door and opened it only a crack to see a man standing there. Dark hair, glasses, slightly overweight, and dressed casually. He didn't look like much of a threat, but my stomach dropped. He asked, "I was wondering about the car outside. Is it for sale?" I told him I didn't think so. "Is there someone here I can talk to about it?" I said, and quite stupidly I might add, "No, you can come back another time," and shut the door, turning the lock as fast as I possibly could. He reached for the handle immediately and started pounding on the door. I heard a string of profanities and the pounding stopped. Terrified, I was crawling on the floor to the phone, hoping he wouldn't be able to see me through one of the windows. Then I heard the noises. Our house had an open garage door, and it led through to the laundry room, where the door lock was broken, and no one had bothered to fix it. Just then, I heard a man yell, and I saw the man through the window run to his car and drive off. My uncle had gotten home just in time and scared the man off. Who knows what would have happened if he wouldn't have made it home in time. Sadly, we didn't get the plate number, and nothing ever came of it, but I'll never be home alone on a holiday again. This happened about 4 years ago. I was 20 at the time. The first time I met the guy who would become my grocery store stalker, he was standing outside the store collecting money for the Salvation Army. You know, Christmas time donations. I'm a fairly friendly person, so I like to say hi to people who work at places I frequent to be nice. This guy was a kid around my age, very tall with a mild resemblance to Lurch from the Addams Family. Dark circles under dark eyes, short black hair, kind of a vacant look in his eyes. I chatted with him for maybe 2 minutes, just idle chit-chat about the weather and whatnot. Nothing particularly memorable or interesting, and then waved goodbye and went home. Little did I know that single moment would be the start of something that would have me genuinely afraid. About 4 or 5 months passed, and I hadn't seen him again. Then one day, as I was grocery shopping with a friend, when as we were chatting, she suddenly got really quiet and kind of recoiled backwards, looking behind me. I turned around to see this guy who had to be at least 6'4", towering over me not 8 inches from my body. He said hi and told me he remembered me from that December I had talked to him, and then he asked for my number. I, being young and never having experienced this type of interaction before, told him I didn't have my number memorized, but that I would write his down and text him later. I kind of half waved my phone at him, pointing out my, at the time, boyfriend whose picture was my wallpaper, making a point to say, "Oh look, that's my boyfriend," to the guy, hoping he would clue in, but no luck. He told me his number, which immediately upon getting, I blocked without letting him get my number. However, what really made my blood run cold was what he said after I put my phone away. He leaned in real close and in a low voice he told me, "Whatever I text you is for your eyes only." At this point, I started to feel genuinely uncomfortable. I said, "Yeah, sure, nice talking to you, but we gotta get back to shopping." And I grabbed my friend and dragged her off, shooting a panicked look at her and asking why she didn't bail me out. Apparently he scared her too, with his getting so close to me, and she didn't know what to do. I want to make it clear, I'm not exactly a small girl at 5'8" and solidly built. I can certainly handle myself, and I very rarely feel intimidated or small in the presence of anyone, male or female. But this guy made me feel tiny and scared. In the months that would follow, he would make me feel truly frightened. I had hoped that creepy interaction would be the last time I saw he, but that was unfortunately not the case. After the initial meeting with him saying that creepy thing about his texts being for my eyes only, it seemed like I would run into him every single time that I got to the store. No matter what checkout lane I was in, he always seemed to appear at the end of it when I finished shopping, and every time I was in the store, I would notice him out of the corner of my eye, watching me, no matter what area I was in. One time I even caught him following me out to my car. At that point, I got scared and decided to say something to the managers. After letting the managers know what was going on, they assured me that they would tell him not to talk to me. After that, he wouldn't speak to me, but I would continue to see him following me around the store at a distance every time that I went up there. It got so bad and I felt so frightened that I started to be afraid to go to the store at all. But I am one of those stubborn people who refuses to be intimidated by someone to the point where I'll stop doing something. I had hoped that maybe it was a coincidence that he was following me. After all, it was a big store, and maybe he just had things to do that just happened to be in the areas I was shopping in. So I started to pay more close attention to my surroundings. Once I started really paying attention, I realized that every single time I was up there, I would constantly notice him in areas of the store I was in. During my last encounter with him, I went up to the store just to grab 2 or 3 items that I needed for dinner that night, and I first saw him standing outside the store when I got there, and with his back to me, I quickly ran inside, hoping he didn't see me. Unfortunately, a few minutes later, I saw him at the very back of the store, and items in hand, I immediately made a beeline towards the front. As soon as I got near the checkout, I ducked behind one of the shelf displays and watched carefully at the front of the store to see if CC would appear, and he did. I watched as he looked up and down the checkout, and when he didn't see me there, I saw him step outside. At this point, I quickly ran into the nearest open cashier, rang up my items, and stuck my head out to the door to look for him. I didn't see him there immediately, so I started trying to make my way back to where I was parked. I had parked a ways away, near the side of the store where a bunch of other small stores and restaurants were lined up, and as I was walking towards my car, I realized I saw him standing by the entrance that I had first entered the store through and ducked behind a pillar immediately, hoping he wouldn't see me. I watched carefully from behind the pillar, and as he scanned the parking lot, he obviously couldn't find me. After a minute or two, he started to walk out towards the direction of the parking lot in front of the store, and so I took the opportunity to make a run for it to my car as soon as he was far enough away that I felt safe. As soon as I got into my car, I locked the doors, and to my horror, when I looked up, he was standing there about 15 feet from my car with a shopping cart in front of him. I knew he followed me. He knew I knew. I fully believed that he had chased after me, and when I made it to my car, he grabbed the nearest cart to make it look like he was collecting them from the parking lot. I remember just feeling absolutely terrified at that moment. I went home and immediately told my grandfather what had happened. I began crying and shaking. My grandfather told me to get in the car. We were going to settle this. He and I drove up to the store in his car, and he walked me into the store and demanded we spoke with the managers immediately, both of them. When the managers arrived at customer service, he asked me to tell them what had been happening and demanded that they ensure he left me alone, or that he would involve the police. The managers swore up and down that they would take care of it. As far as I know, he wasn't fired immediately because my friend who first encountered him with me when this whole thing had begun told me that she would see him from time to time when she was there by herself, but that any time I went with her, she would never see him. I fully believe he knew whenever I was there, only this time instead of stalking me, he avoided me. Eventually, everyone who knew the situation stopped seeing him there, so I think he may have gotten fired or moved on from that store. Either way, I haven't had any issues since. But I have never felt so afraid of another human being as I did that day seeing him make eye contact with me in the parking lot as I locked my car doors. It still creeps me out to think he was watching me so closely every time I entered the store that he could so easily avoid or follow me whenever he wanted. So to the guy who stalked me every time I went grocery shopping for 4 months straight, let's never meet again.